An old train driver's book sits open in the Mississippi Railroad Museum. Its yellow pages show normal cargo runs and passenger trips from the 1940s. But between the everyday notes are words that museum workers don't like to talk about with visitors. Train 447, seen on eastbound track. No train was supposed to be there. Ghost train, all cars dark. No driver could be seen. Phantom train passed at mile marker 23, gone beyond the bridge. The book belonged to Samuel Morrison. He worked for the Illinois Central Railroad for 27 years. Morrison was known for keeping good records. He stayed calm under pressure. His fellow workers trusted him. They let him handle the hardest routes through Mississippi's backcountry. But his final notes tell of something strange, something that changed everything he thought he knew about trains. The Mississippi Delta has always been a place where strange things happen. Spanish moss hangs like burial cloths from old oak trees. Fog rolls off the rivers in thick waves. The land itself looks caught between two worlds. It's neither fully land nor water. This makes it perfect for legends. But the phantom trains of Mississippi are more than just stories. They are one of the most lasting strange events in American railroad history. Railroad travel changed Mississippi in the mid-1800s. The Illinois Central Railroad finished its main line through the state in 1856. This connected Chicago to New Orleans. This huge project needed thousands of workers. They laid track through dangerous swampland and thick forests. Many died in work accidents. Some drowned in flooded digging sites. Others were crushed by heavy equipment. Their bodies were often buried in unmarked graves along the tracks. By the 1880s, Mississippi had over 2,400 miles of railroad track. The network carried cotton to market. It brought factory goods inland. Towns grew up around train stops. The railroad became the lifeline of country towns. But progress came with tragedy. Train wrecks were common in the early days. Wooden cars broke apart on impact. Coal-fired boilers exploded. Crashes sent trains tumbling into valleys. The worst accident in Mississippi Railroad history happened on the 17th of November, 1887. It was near the town of Vaughan. The Illinois Central's southbound passenger train was called the Cannonball Express. It crashed head-on with a freight train. The crash killed engineer Casey Jones and several passengers. Jones became a folk hero. He tried to stop the train before impact. But locals began seeing strange things soon after the wreck. People claimed to see Jones's ghost train racing through the night. Its whistle echoed across the delta. Similar reports grew throughout the 1890s. Railroad workers spoke of phantom trains. These ghost trains appeared without warning. They showed up on supposedly empty tracks. They followed no printed schedule. They carried no passengers or freight. Most scary of all, they seemed to want to cause harm. Engineers reported near crashes with ghost trains. The phantom trains vanished moments before impact. Signal operators watched phantom trains pass their towers, but they found no matching entry in their logbooks. The Illinois Central Railroad first dismissed these reports. Company officials blamed them on drinking or fear. They said long work hours and dangerous conditions made workers scared. But the sightings continued. They happened with scary consistency. Many witnesses often saw the same phantom train on the same night. Their descriptions matched in exact detail. Even doubtful railroad bosses began to pay attention. Thomas Harrison worked as a telegraph operator at the Yazoo City station. He worked there from 1894 to 1912. His job required him to help train movements. He had to make sure trains passed safely through his section of track. Harrison kept detailed records of every train that passed his station. In later interviews, he described several meetings with phantom trains. These meetings made no sense. The first happened during a November snowstorm in 1897. Harrison was alone in the telegraph office. He was watching radio traffic on the main line. Around midnight, he heard the clear sound of a train coming. The whistle's sad cry cut through the howling wind. Harrison stepped outside to identify the train. He wanted to update his logbook. What he saw made his blood freeze. A massive steam train came out of the swirling snow. Its headlamp cast a strange blue glow across the tracks. The engine pulled a string of passenger cars. Their windows were dark and empty. Most unsettling was the complete lack of sound except for the whistle. No puffing steam, no grinding wheels on steel rails. The train moved with ghostly silence through the night. Harrison checked his schedule. No trains were allowed on the main line until morning. He tried to signal the train with his lantern, but the engineer's cab looked empty. As the phantom train got close to the station platform, Harrison could see through the passenger car windows. The seats were empty. They were covered in what looked like thick spider webs. The train passed without stopping. It vanished into the darkness beyond the depot. The next morning, Harrison walked the tracks in both directions from the station. He found no evidence that any train had passed during the night. The rails showed no fresh wear marks. There were no cinders or ash from a coal-fired train. Even more puzzling, the snow along the tracks was undisturbed. It was as if the phantom train had passed through without touching the real world. Harrison reported what happened to his supervisor. The supervisor ordered a complete investigation. Railroad detectives questioned station operators up and down the line. None had logged a train matching Harrison's description. Company records showed no missing trains. There was no unauthorized use of equipment. The Illinois Central Railroad officially called the incident a case of mistaken identity. They said severe weather conditions might have caused it. But Harrison wasn't done with phantom trains. His second encounter happened on a clear summer evening in 1901. He was closing the telegraph office when he heard a train coming from the south. This time, he was ready. Harrison grabbed his pocket watch and notepad. He wanted to document every detail. The train that rounded the bend looked much older than any engine in regular service. Its design looked like the wood-burning trains of the Civil War era. Black smoke poured from its diamond-shaped smokestack. The cowcatcher on the front was decorated with fancy metalwork. No modern railroad would consider such decoration practical. Behind the engine, a single passenger car swayed on the uneven track. As the train drew closer, Harrison noticed something that made his hands shake. The passenger car windows glowed with warm yellow light. This showed silhouettes of people inside. Men in top hats and women in fancy dresses sat motionless in their seats. Their clothing looked like it was from an earlier time, perhaps the 1860s or 1870s. None of the passengers moved or spoke. They stared straight ahead. Harrison later described their faces as infinitely sad. The phantom train slowed as it got close to the station. It seemed like it intended to stop for passengers. Harrison could clearly see the engineer in the train cab. The man wore a faded uniform. He kept one hand on the whistle cord. His face was thin and pale. His sunken eyes seemed to bore into Harrison's soul. For a moment, their eyes met across the platform. The ghostly engineer touched the brim of his cap. It was a gesture of professional courtesy. Then something extraordinary happened. The passenger car door swung open with a rusty creak. A figure in a dark coat stepped onto the platform. Harrison could see that it was a woman, but her face stayed hidden in shadow. She stood perfectly still for several seconds. She seemed to be waiting for someone. When no one joined her, she climbed back aboard. The door closed with a hollow thud. The phantom train resumed its journey. It never came to a complete stop. Harrison watched it disappear around a curve to the north. He checked his pocket watch. He made careful notes about the time and duration of the sighting. Later that evening, he telegraphed stations along the route. He asked if they had observed the mysterious train. Their responses were unanimous. No train had passed their locations at the time Harrison specified. Word of Harrison's encounters spread throughout the railroad community. Other workers began sharing their own experiences with phantom trains. The stories followed similar patterns. Ghost trains appeared without warning on supposedly empty tracks. They carried passengers from bygone eras. Most operated in complete silence except for their whistles, and they vanished without leaving physical evidence of their passage. Joseph Whitfield served as a section foreman on the Yazoo and Mississippi Valley Railroad. He worked there from 1903 to 1925. His job involved keeping up track and checking bridges. He covered a 30-mile stretch south of Jackson. Whitfield employed a crew of 12 men. They lived in work camps alongside the railroad. They knew every inch of their territory. They prided themselves on keeping the line in perfect condition. In the summer of 1908, Whitfield's crew began reporting unusual activity on their section of track. Workers claimed to see mysterious lights moving through the forest at night. The lights followed the railroad right-of-way, but they seemed to travel faster than any normal train. Some crew members heard the sound of a steam whistle echoing through the woods. This happened when no scheduled trains were operating in the area. Whitfield first suspected that homeless people were camping along the tracks. They might be using lanterns for light. Railroad police regularly patrolled the line to discourage trespassing, but searches of the forest showed no evidence of human activity. There were no campfire remains, no discarded food, no makeshift shelters. The mysterious lights continued to appear despite increased security patrols. The situation got worse in September 1908. Whitfield encountered the phantom train himself. He was checking a wooden trestle bridge over Bogue Chitto Creek. He heard a train coming. The sound came from the south. The tracks curved through a dense stand of cypress trees there. Whitfield stepped off the bridge to allow the train to pass safely. What came out of the forest made no sense. A steam train seemed to be pulling an impossibly long train of freight cars. Whitfield counted more than 50 cars as they passed his position. But the Illinois Central Railroad rarely operated freight trains longer than 25 cars on this section of track. The additional length would have caused scheduling conflicts. It would have required special clearances. Even more puzzling was the train's cargo. Each freight car seemed to be loaded with cotton bales. Their white shapes were visible through gaps in the wooden sides, but Mississippi's cotton harvest wouldn't begin for several weeks. No farmer would have bales ready for shipment in early September. Whitfield tried to read the car numbers as they passed, but the paint looked faded and unreadable. The train itself looked ancient compared to modern engines. Its design suggested it had been built decades earlier, possibly before the Civil War. The smokestack was tall and narrow. It was topped with a spark arrestor that looked like a wire cage. The cowcatcher was made of iron bars instead of the solid steel plates used on newer trains. Most unsettling was the complete absence of crew. Whitfield could see directly into the engineer's cab as the train passed, but no one was operating the controls. As the phantom train crossed the trestle bridge, Whitfield noticed something that made his stomach churn. The wooden structure showed no signs of stress or movement. This was despite supporting what should have been hundreds of tons of train and freight cars. The bridge didn't creak or sway. The railroad spikes stayed firmly seated in the crosties. It was as if the phantom train had no physical weight or mass. Whitfield followed the tracks north to find out where the mysterious train had gone. He found the section clear in both directions. There were no trains visible on the long straight stretch that led toward Jackson. Radio communication with the dispatcher confirmed something troubling. No freight trains were allowed on this section of track. The phantom train and its 50 cars of cotton had vanished completely. The incident prompted a complete investigation by railroad officials. Company detectives interviewed every member of Whitfield's crew. They examined the tracks for unusual wear patterns or damage. Engineers tested the trestle bridge to make sure it was strong. The investigation found no physical evidence to support Whitfield's account. Yet his supervisors couldn't ignore his reputation for honesty and attention to detail. Railroad records from this period show increasing concern about phantom train sightings throughout Mississippi. Company letters mention unexplained train activity and unauthorized use of right-of-way. Some officials suggested that the sightings might be caused by optical illusions. Others thought air conditions unique to the Mississippi Delta might be responsible. Others worried that the reports meant more serious problems with employee mental health or discipline. The Illinois Central Railroad hired Dr. Margaret Foster to study the phantom train problem. She was a brain doctor from New Orleans. Foster interviewed dozens of railroad workers who claimed to have witnessed ghost trains. She gave them psychological tests. She examined medical records for signs of hallucination or mental illness. Her findings surprised even the most skeptical company bosses. Foster discovered that phantom train witnesses shared several characteristics. Most were experienced railroad employees with excellent service records. They typically worked night shifts or early morning hours. These were times when sightings were most common. Almost all reported the encounters as deeply disturbing experiences. They wished to forget what they had seen. None showed signs of mental illness or substance abuse problems. More importantly, Foster identified consistent details in witness testimonies. These couldn't be explained by coincidence or suggestion. Multiple observers described the same train design features. They reported identical passenger car setups and operational behaviors. Their accounts often included specific details about railroad equipment and procedures. These would be difficult to make up without extensive technical knowledge. Foster's final report acknowledged something important. She couldn't provide a scientific explanation for the phantom train sightings. She recommended that the railroad company take the reports seriously. She suggested putting in place safety protocols to protect employees who might encounter unexplained events. The report was classified as confidential. It stayed locked in company files for decades. The phantom trains of Mississippi reached their most active period during the 1920s and 1930s. Multiple sightings were reported each month throughout the state's railroad network. Some witnesses described passenger trains. These carried elegantly dressed travelers from the Victorian era. Others encountered freight trains loaded with cargo that couldn't be identified. A few reported seeing military trains. These carried Civil War soldiers who stared silently from boxcar doorways. Robert Caldwell worked as a train engineer for the Illinois Central Railroad. He was there from 1923 to 1948. He operated passenger trains on the route between Memphis and New Orleans. This route passed through some of Mississippi's most isolated territory. Caldwell was known for his skill in handling powerful steam trains. He had an ability to maintain precise schedules despite challenging conditions. On a foggy October night in 1927, Caldwell was piloting the southbound City of New Orleans passenger train. He encountered a phantom train that nearly caused a catastrophic collision. His train was getting close to the town of Durant at moderate speed. Caldwell spotted a headlight ahead on the main line. The light seemed to be moving north. It was coming directly toward his train. Caldwell immediately applied the brakes. He sounded his whistle to warn the coming train, but the phantom train showed no signs of slowing down or changing course. As the two trains drew closer, Caldwell could see that the oncoming engine was pulling several passenger cars. The windows glowed with an eerie blue light. He could make out figures seated inside. With less than 100 yards separating the trains, Caldwell made a desperate decision. He reversed his throttle and attempted an emergency stop. His fireman jumped from the cab. He rolled down the bank. Passengers in the rear cars were thrown from their seats by the sudden slowing down. Caldwell braced himself for an impact. The collision would have killed dozens of people. Instead, the phantom train passed through Caldwell's train as if it were made of vapor. He felt a brief sensation of intense cold. This happened as the ghost engine occupied the same space as his own. Then the phantom was gone. It disappeared into the fog behind his train. Caldwell brought his train to a complete stop. He climbed down to inspect for damage. He found no evidence that another train had been present. The incident was thoroughly investigated by railroad officials and federal safety inspectors. They interviewed all passengers and crew members aboard Caldwell's train. Several witnesses confirmed seeing the coming headlight. They felt the train's emergency braking, but no one could explain where the phantom train had gone after the near collision. Caldwell's experience was particularly significant. It occurred on a busy passenger route with multiple witnesses. Unlike the isolated sightings reported by lone railroad workers, this encounter involved dozens of people. They could back up the basic facts. The Illinois Central Railroad could no longer dismiss phantom train reports. They couldn't call them individual hallucinations or attention-seeking behavior. The company quietly put in place new safety procedures. These were for engineers operating in areas where phantom trains had been reported. Crews were told to radio their dispatchers immediately. They should report any unexplained train activity they observed. Additional signal towers were built at key locations. This improved visibility and communication. Some railroad workers began carrying blessed medals or other religious objects. They hoped for protection against supernatural encounters. As diesel trains replaced steam engines in the 1940s and 1950s, phantom train sightings became less frequent, but they didn't disappear entirely. Modern witnesses described ghost trains that kept the appearance and sound of steam-powered trains from earlier eras. The phantoms seemed frozen in time. They were eternally repeating journeys from Mississippi's railroad past. Margaret Townsend served as a crossing guard at Highway 82 near Indianola. She worked there from 1962 to 1978. Her job required her to lower gates and turn on warning signals whenever trains got close to the road intersection. The Illinois Central Railroad provided her with a radio. She used it to coordinate with dispatchers. She made sure both trains and highway traffic passed safely. On several occasions during her time there, Townsend observed phantom trains. These triggered her crossing signals despite having no radio approval. The ghost trains would get close to the intersection normally. This caused the automatic detection system to turn on warning lights and lower the gates. But when the phantom trains reached the roadway, they would vanish before crossing to the other side. These incidents created dangerous situations for motorists. They found themselves stopped at railroad crossings with no train present. Some drivers became impatient. They attempted to drive around the lowered gates. They didn't know that a phantom train might appear at any moment. Townsend developed the habit of visually checking each train's presence. She did this before allowing the crossing signals to operate. Her most memorable encounter occurred during a thunderstorm in August 1971. Lightning lit up the railroad tracks as a phantom passenger train got close from the east. Townsend could clearly see the train's headlight. She could see the warm glow from passenger car windows. But as the ghost train reached the highway intersection, a brilliant lightning strike lit up the entire area. In that instant of perfect visibility, Townsend saw that the crossing was empty. The phantom train had vanished without a trace. Railroad records show that crossing signal breakdowns increased dramatically at locations where phantom trains were frequently reported. Electronic detection equipment would turn on without any physical stimulus. Signal lights would flash in patterns that didn't match standard railroad codes. Some crossings required constant maintenance to keep their warning systems working properly. The event extended beyond Mississippi's borders. It reached into neighboring states along major railroad corridors. Phantom train sightings were reported in Louisiana, Alabama, and Tennessee. This happened wherever the Illinois Central Railroad operated. The consistency of these encounters across multiple states suggested a regional event. It wasn't just localized supernatural activity. Modern paranormal investigators have proposed several theories to explain Mississippi's phantom trains. Some believe the ghost trains represent leftover energy from traumatic events. These might include fatal accidents or wartime military transport. Others suggest that certain geographic locations may create conditions that help time problems or dimensional overlaps. The most compelling theory focuses on the emotional significance of railroads in Mississippi's history. Trains carried enslaved people to cotton plantations. They transported soldiers to Civil War battlefields. They brought economic opportunity to rural communities. The railroad network witnessed countless human dramas. These included separation, loss, and unfulfilled dreams. Perhaps the phantom trains serve as signs of these powerful historical forces. Dr. Elizabeth Montgomery is a folklore professor at the University of Mississippi. She has studied phantom train reports for more than 30 years. She believes the sightings reflect a collective, unconscious connection to Mississippi's transportation heritage. According to Montgomery, the ghost trains appear during periods of social or economic change. This happens when communities feel disconnected from their past. Physical evidence for phantom trains stays hard to find despite decades of investigation. No photographs have successfully captured the ghost trains. Several witnesses claim their cameras broke down during sightings. Audio recordings contain unexplained whistle sounds and mechanical noises. These don't match any scheduled train activity. Some railroad crossings show electronic problems. These might be related to phantom train passages. The Mississippi Department of Archives and History keeps a collection of phantom train testimonies. These date back to the 1890s. These accounts provide valuable insight into how the event has evolved over time. Early reports focused on Civil War-era trains. These carried soldiers or supplies. Later sightings featured passenger trains from the Victorian period. They had elegantly dressed travelers. Modern encounters typically involve freight trains carrying mysterious cargo that can't be identified. Contemporary railroad workers continue to report phantom train sightings, but they're often reluctant to discuss their experiences publicly. The BNSF Railway now operates much of Mississippi's former Illinois Central trackage. They keep unofficial protocols for handling supernatural encounters. Dispatchers are trained to take phantom train reports seriously. They put in place appropriate safety measures. Local communities throughout Mississippi preserve phantom train legends through oral tradition and written accounts. The town of Vaughan operates a small museum dedicated to Casey Jones and the Cannonball Express wreck. Visitors frequently ask about ghost train sightings in the area. Museum volunteers share stories passed down through generations of railroad families. Some Mississippi communities have embraced their phantom train heritage as tourist attractions. The city of Water Valley hosts an annual Ghost Train Festival. It features historic train displays and storytelling events. Local restaurants serve themed menus with dishes named after famous phantom train sightings. Gift shops sell postcards showing artistic renderings of Mississippi's ghost trains. Railroad enthusiasts and paranormal researchers organize regular trips to Mississippi locations with active phantom train reports. These investigations typically involve overnight vigils at crossing sites, abandoned stations, and historic railroad bridges. Participants use various electronic equipment. They monitor for electronic problems, temperature changes, and unexplained sounds. Despite sophisticated modern detection methods, phantom trains continue to avoid scientific documentation. The ghost trains seem to exist in a realm that goes beyond physical measurement and technological analysis. They appear when least expected. They challenge conventional understanding of reality. They vanish before leaving conclusive evidence of their presence. The phantom trains of Mississippi represent more than supernatural curiosities or railroad folklore. They embody the state's complex relationship with progress, tradition, and historical memory. Each ghost train carries passengers and cargo from Mississippi's past into an uncertain present. Their journeys remind us that some experiences go beyond logical explanation. They connect us to mysteries that may never be fully understood. The Mississippi Railroad Museum continues to receive reports of phantom train sightings from visitors and local residents. Museum staff keep files of witness testimonies. They have photographs of alleged problems. They keep recordings of unexplained sounds captured near railroad tracks. While skeptics dismiss these accounts as products of imagination or wrong identification, the sheer volume and consistency of reports suggests something more profound may be occurring. Railroad historians have documented over 300 separate phantom train encounters in Mississippi since the 1890s. These sightings span multiple generations of witnesses. They include various types of ghost trains. Some phantoms appear as single engines traveling without cars. Others show up as complete passenger or freight trains with dozens of cars. A few witnesses have reported seeing entire railroad yards filled with ghostly trains and equipment from bygone eras. The most intriguing aspect of Mississippi's phantom trains is their apparent intelligence and purposeful behavior. Unlike residual hauntings that simply replay past events, these ghost trains seem to interact with their environment. They respond to human observers. They slow down at crossings. They sound their whistles as warnings. Sometimes they even stop to allow phantom passengers to board or get off. Dr. Patricia Williams is a psychology professor at Mississippi State University. She has interviewed over 50 phantom train witnesses during her 15-year study of the event. She notes that many witnesses report feeling a deep sense of sadness or loss during their encounters. Some describe hearing faint voices calling out from the passenger cars. It's as if the phantom travelers are trying to communicate messages from beyond. Williams has identified several common elements in phantom train testimonies. These suggest these may be more than simple hallucinations. Witnesses consistently describe specific train features that match historical railroad equipment used in Mississippi during the late 1800s and early 1900s. Many report seeing period-appropriate clothing on phantom passengers. This accurately reflects fashion trends from decades past. The phantom trains also seem to follow historical railroad routes. This includes lines that were abandoned or rerouted many years ago. Some ghost trains travel on tracks that were removed decades earlier. This suggests they are somehow tied to Mississippi's railroad geography rather than its current physical setup. Railroad workers who have witnessed phantom trains often report lasting psychological effects from their encounters. Many describe feeling watched or followed during later shifts. Some have requested transfers to different sections of track to avoid further supernatural encounters. A few have left railroad employment entirely. They claim they could no longer work in areas where phantom trains operate. The Illinois Central Railroad successor companies have quietly kept policies for handling phantom train reports. These procedures are rarely discussed publicly. Dispatchers are told to log all supernatural encounters. They coordinate with nearby crews to ensure safety. Some railroad supervisors have developed informal networks for sharing information about phantom train activity. They warn employees about locations where sightings frequently occur. Modern technology has failed to provide definitive proof of phantom trains, but it has shown some intriguing problems. Railroad crossing cameras occasionally capture unexplained flashes of light or shadowy shapes. These don't match scheduled train traffic. Trackside sensors sometimes detect the electronic signatures of passing trains when no physical trains are present in the area. Weather conditions seem to influence phantom train activity. Most sightings occur during foggy nights, thunderstorms, or other air disturbances. Some researchers theorize that certain weather patterns may create conditions helpful to paranormal manifestations. They might make it easier for phantom trains to cross from their ghostly realm into our physical world. The phantom trains of Mississippi continue to challenge our understanding of reality. They force us to question the boundaries between past and present. These ghost trains serve as reminders that history leaves permanent marks on the landscape. Sometimes these marks show up in ways that go beyond conventional explanation. Samuel Morrison's driver logbook stays on display at the Mississippi Railroad Museum. Visitors can read his careful documentation of phantom train encounters alongside routine schedule notations. His final entry was dated just 3 days before his retirement. It simply states, "Ghost train observed eastbound, mile marker 47. Passengers waved from windows, waved back. Some journeys never end." Modern railroad operations in Mississippi continue under the watchful presence of these ghostly trains. Engineers report brief glimpses of phantom trains in peripheral vision. Signal operators detect unexplained electronic problems that suggest ghostly passages through their territories. The phantom trains stay active participants in Mississippi's ongoing railroad story. They are eternal reminders that the past refuses to stay buried along abandoned tracks. What drives these ghost trains to continue their endless journeys through Mississippi's night? Who are the phantom passengers eternally trapped aboard trains that travel between worlds? Why do the phantom trains choose to reveal themselves to some witnesses while staying invisible to others? The answers may lie buried in Mississippi's soil, alongside the unnamed railroad workers whose deaths gave birth to these enduring mysteries. Do the phantom trains carry messages from Mississippi's troubled past? Are they trying to warn us about dangers that still lurk along the railroad corridors? Or are they simply echoes of human emotions so powerful that they continue to echo through time and space? Each sighting raises new questions while providing few answers. If you've ever driven across a railroad crossing in Mississippi and felt an unexplained chill, if you've heard a distant train whistle when no trains were scheduled to pass, if you've glimpsed mysterious lights moving along abandoned tracks, then you may have encountered one of the phantom trains. Share your experiences in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories from the shadowy corners of American history.